Welcome everyone to Suburban Action Week, day number 5, to the Metra Rail Update. I'm Maggie Sherbinsky from the Active Transportation Alliance, and my coworker Julia Gerasimenko is here. She'll be helping with Q&A and assisting in many other ways. But I want to introduce you to our speaker today, Michael Gillis, who is Metra's Director of Communications. And before we get started, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can see us. And you might want, if you want to see the speakers in a bigger way, you can use in the upper right-hand corner, you can change your view to speaker. And if you have questions for Michael throughout this discussion, the session, please add any questions or comments you have to the chat, and Julia will read through those questions. And this is going to be a more conversational style session where Julia and I have a few questions for Michael. And of course, we definitely welcome all of your questions. So to get us started, Michael, thanks for being here today. Appreciate.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we appreciate you taking the time. And just to get us started, can you tell us maybe actually a little bit about your background? How long have you been at Metra? How did you end up at Metra?
Sure. So I've been in the Chicago area since I came out here to go to Northwestern in 1981. I started working at the Sun-Times after I graduated. I worked there about 23 years. One of the things I enjoyed about working there was covering the transportation beat for a time. I was laid off by them in 2008 in the Great Recession. I landed at Metra a few months later. I've been here ever since. So it was something when you look around as a journalist, you look around to be a spokesman for an agency. And I really am a deep believer in mass transit and public transportation. And I was really happy to get the job here. So I've been working at Metra for about 12 years now.
Great. And can you tell us a little bit about what's happening at Metra right now? What are some current projects? What are some projects that are in the works that we can look forward to in the future?
Yeah, sure. So this is a really good time to be asking that question. We were starved for capital dollars for almost a decade. We did get capital money in 2009 from that capital program, but most of that money went to buying new cars for the Metra Electric line, about 3/4 of that money. About 300 million was taken away from us from the state budget woes, and we had to spend about 400 million during that time on positive train control, which is a new safety system that makes our system a lot safer, but it was very expensive, very complicated. The good news is the state did pass a new capital program. It did give us a huge infusion of money. And most importantly, it gave us that pay-go money, which is sort of a steady stream that we can rely on. So we started we've got a lot of plans in the works, mostly engineering. I wish we could say we're starting construction on a lot of this stuff, but it is in the pipeline. So I guess one thing I want to start with, because I know a lot of people want to know about the Fair Transit South Cook pilot. That's something that Cook County came to us and asked us if we would work to them. It's a win-win situation for us. It was a no-brainer to participate. They are fronting us money to provide lower fares on the Metra Electric and Rock Island lines. COVID has kind of been a downer on this because it's really hard to do the true tests that we wanted to do, but we wanted to just get the thing started. It's easy to lower the fares. So we did that right away. It's a 3-year pilot, and we'll just be watching it very closely as things progress. And I'm happy to answer more questions about that if people have them later, but I just kind of want to go through a broad brush of what we've been working on. On COVID, we can talk about that later. I know you have some other questions, but we are planning a safe return to work summit in March 11th. There'll be more details about that coming, but we're trying to get together with the business community to sort of prepare people to come back to the workplace. And we want them to know as part of that Metra is a safe option We've got a lot of data that shows mass transit is not a super spreader, that it's safe as long as the precautions are taken, and we're all taking those precautions. So that's something exciting to talk about. Bike cars, I know probably most of your membership knows about those. We launched 2 of them in the fall, and we know it was a terrible time to be launching them right in the winter. It's just the way the timing worked out, and we didn't want to wait till spring. The good news is in the spring, we'll have 6 more of them ready starting in May. We'll have 8 total. They'll be spread out along all the lines that have diesel cars. You know, we haven't quite figured out how we're going to roll those out yet, but every line will have them eventually. We're still trying to figure out how to do it on the Metra electric line. We haven't done that yet, but you know, we are looking into that. The other exciting thing, speaking of cars, you may have seen in January, our board approved a huge new car purchase, up to 500 new cars. It's a new design. It's not the gallery car, which is sort of the open air between the 2 levels. It'll be 2 different levels. It's actually kind of a tri-level. All the modern technology. It'll be a huge difference from what people are riding now. I mean, the cars we have now, the design dates from, you know, 60, 70 years ago. These will be, you know, real modern cars. It's going to take us 3 years to get the first of those, but that's an exciting development. Just on a side note, at our board meeting early this week, we decided to buy some new switching engines. They're sort of the workhorse of the system, mostly used in yards to move things around. We're buying Tier 4 and alternative fuel switchers so that we'll be as, you know, even greener than we are already. And then we have a lot of station projects lined up. There's one project we call the 5-pack, but it's 5 stations along the Metra electric line, 79th, 87th, 95th, 103rd, and 111th. We're designing full rehabs of those stations, just showing our commitment to the city of Chicago, making them ADA accessible. Those are in engineering now. Construction will start in a couple years. We've also been working with U of C to redo the 59th, 60th Street station. We have plans to renovate the 147th Street station. The Homewood station, we've started work on. The Amtrak side of it has started work on, and we'll pick up our end of that when they're finishing. And then we have a full-scale renovation plan for the Van Buren Street station, which is a historical station. It's going to be very expensive, but it really needs a lot of work. And then you probably know about 2 new stations we're working on. Peterson Ridge, which is on the UP North line up in Edgewater. We'll be breaking ground on that in the spring. And then Auburn Park, which is along the Rock Island line near just north of Gresham. We've started some work on that project, mostly demolition work. We'll be letting contract for the first part of that work pretty soon. And so that will be up and going fairly quickly. And then we're also working with PACE on creating a Harvey Transportation Center. The idea is just to have kind of a common waiting area and better coordination of service between us and PACE. Harvey is a big junction for PACE, so that's a big improvement for there. This new money is also enabling us to replace all the elevators in our system. They're all past their useful life. They fail fairly often. You know, weather's not very kind on elevators in Chicago. We're hoping to get much more rugged ones in this purchase so they last better, you know, are more functional. And also we're working on putting in new shelters, both to replace ones that are worn out and also to put ones where we don't have them. And that's something we'll be working on over the next few years. Another exciting change is we are trying to buy new ticket vending machines. We have an RFP on the street for that right now. We're analyzing the proposals we received. We hope to have a contract fairly soon. The idea with that is to first replace the machines that we have now, which are at the downtown stations and along the Metro Electric at the busiest stations. But ultimately, we want to have a vending machines at every Metro station, all 242 stations. So there's always a place to buy a ticket to board the train. And then sort of lastly, there's a long range plan to build a flyover at our A2 switching complex. That's that place at Western and Grand that in the winter you always see the gas burner flames. The media loves to focus on that because they're real pretty and cool. But ideally we want to get rid of those switch heaters because we're getting rid of the switches because we're building a bridge over the whole thing. It's massively expensive and complicated. But if we do that, we can also, and this is part of our plans, try to launch better service to O'Hare. And then we're working with the city of Chicago on their plans to renovate the Fulton market area, including a station there. So those are dependent on getting that U2 done. So those are some of the big things we have going, and a lot of them are thanks to the capital bill that Springfield passed.
Great, thanks so much, Michael. There's so much going on, and it's really great to hear that overview. You know, you touched on this, and I think we were saving it for kind of a more comprehensive answer. So we're curious to hear more about how, you know, COVID has affected the system and what the outlook is for 2021.
Yeah, so I think you guys all know that COVID hit public transportation very hard. It hit Metra particularly hard because much of our ridership is able to work from home, and they did. At our low point, we had 3% of our normal ridership. We've climbed back up. We're at about 10% now. We were hoping to be a little higher at this point. You know, sort of that second spike of COVID before Christmas kind of put a damper on that. So, you know, ridership is still pretty far down. As I said, we've got this summit scheduled for next month to start to encourage businesses to feel safe about bringing their employees back to work and encouraging them to use mass transit. We have done, you know, everything we were recommended to do in terms of providing a safe environment on the train. So we're disinfecting every day, high touch areas more than once a day if possible. We already had pretty good filters on our cars, but we want to make sure people understand they're hospital grade filters, and our cars replace the air every 4 minutes, which is better than most office buildings. We have a full barrage of signage encouraging people to wear masks and physically distance. And right now, the level of ridership and the level of service allow for enough room for physical distancing on all our trains. We know we have to kind of stay ahead of that and add service before the trains get crowded. So we're committed to adding trains or adding cars to trains or trains to the schedule as ridership grows to maintain that physical distancing as best as possible. And we're doing similar work in our stations, similar signage. And of course, we're having our conductors make many announcements about the needs to wear masks and be physically distant. And we are seeing, you know, overwhelming cooperation by our customers on a daily basis. It's an extremely high percentage of people are wearing masks. There is plenty of room to spread out, and we think it's a safe environment for everyone.
With the increase in remote work and maybe different commuting patterns now, can you speak at all to, is Metra considering, you know, throughout the year and next year, will you be changing or adapting your schedule, running potentially in a different way? Yeah,
absolutely. And I don't remember when this was. It was probably late last summer, early in the fall. We adopted 6 principles we call service restoration principles to guide our scheduling efforts as we you know, see ridership return. And so we're fully aware that ridership patterns might be different, and we want to be responsive to that. So those principles are: we want to provide consistent and frequent service throughout the day, establish easily understandable and memorable schedules, include express service when and where possible. Make sure we don't forget about transfers, both within Metra lines and within CTA and PACE. Look at new markets, including reverse commute markets, and then promote regional equity, which is something we're doing with that South Cook pilot. So what we've said is, now's a good time. It's sort of a blank slate with schedules to be responsive and just keep an eye on how ridership is returning, when it's returning, and make sure we're adjusting to that.
Great. And so we're getting some interest in the comments on the bike cars. So are there plans for the new bike cars to be on rush hour trains or only off peak? And are there plans that would allow a rider to learn which trains at their station each day will have the bike cars?
Yeah, so I don't know the answer to the rush hour question. In terms of providing guidance, that's something I would like to see us do. I know it's, and we are doing that with the current cars, and I think we'll continue to do that. I mean, obviously, if you're making plans to ride a bike, you're going to want to know when those cars are there. So the answer to that is yes. Rush hour, I don't know the answer to that. Sorry.
Great. And given, and what kind of response are you getting so far from the bike cars?
Well, I think, the response to the concept has been overwhelmingly positive. I mean, people really like the idea that we introduced them. I think, and it's probably a good chunk of your membership are grateful to us. The usage, it's okay, but it's, the problem is nobody's riding, nobody's really taking a lot of recreational trips in general and on Metra. So we're not, in case anybody's worried about it, we're not going to say nobody's riding these cars, and so we're not going to do this. We understand the time, and our intent is to have 6 more cars and introduce them starting next spring, in the spring.
Great. And going back to the purchase of new fare vending machines, are there plans to create a tap on, tap off system like with Ventra cards? This person is thinking of systems like Caltrain or TFL in London.
Yeah, so we've made no decision about changing our fare collection process. However, we do know that to go to a tap on, tap off, or an honor system, you cannot do any of that unless you have the ability to buy a ticket at every station. So with those vending machines, we're definitely laying the foundation for changes. Whether we go ahead with those changes, we haven't made that decision, but at least we're committed to making sure that you'll be able to buy a ticket at a station. You won't have to buy it on the train.
Yeah, that's important for access. And then a few more kind of specific questions related to your first set of comments. Would the Fulton Market Station work as an alternate terminal to the other downtown stations, or would it be an intermediate stop next to Union and Ogilvy?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't figured that one out. I suspect it probably will be an intermediate stop. It might depend on ridership. If there's enough people who just want to terminate there, I suppose we would look at that. But it's really kind of too early to answer that question.
And this is more of a comment. Someone is noting on UP North, there's very little fare collection or mask enforcement. The conductors aren't walking the trains.
Yeah, so I had hoped that most people who rode the UP trains had seen these stories in the media, but I don't know how much detail I have to get into here, but the 3 UP lines are owned by Union Pacific Railroad, and they're operated by Union Pacific employees under a contract known as a purchase of service agreement. And early on in the pandemic, Union Pacific told us that they were not going to require their conductors to work the train cars again until there was a widespread vaccine. We disagreed strongly with UP's decision, and we asked them repeatedly, our conductors on the lines that we operate, and BNSF Railway, which has a similar PSA with us, has been having its conductors walk the trains again, but UP has refused. We sued them for breach of contract in October because of this issue. Last month, there was a preliminary injunction issued against UP requiring them to have their conductors walk through the trains again. That was we raised that as a safety issue, so it didn't cover the fare collection issue, but they should be walking through the train cars again. And because they weren't walking through the train cars, there was, in our opinion, and this was part of our lawsuit, there was lax enforcement, there was lax following of the rules. Our contention was that the mere presence of a conductor encourages people to follow the rules, to be civil to others. And if there's nobody there, it gets a little more wide open. So that's what happened there. The fare collection system that was set up at Ogilvie was set up by UP at Ogilvie against our wishes. We did not agree with it. And so unfortunately, a lot of this is going to end up in court unless the vaccine, solves everything and things return to normal.
We know it's been a really complicated situation and stressful for everyone involved pretty much. So thanks for kind of laying that out and for your leadership there. All right, and back to the bike cars. We're wondering how Metra encourages local communities regarding access to bike commuters. So bike racks, bike corrals, etc.
That's another question I don't really know the answer to. I know we do have bike racks at a lot of stations. Many of the stations are kind of controlled by the municipalities, but I just don't know the logistics in terms of how much we work with them to get those in there.
Right. Well, kind of a more broad question from us. We're wondering, how can the advocates here today and those watching the recording support Metra and support transit moving forward?
Well, it's kind of a question that I think the answer to. You're really doing it, your organization, on a daily basis. By advocating for more funding for us. I know, I think I had a talk with Julia about this last time we met. You see the state of Illinois drop, $500 million into roads, but it's hard for us to make the argument that we also need the funding. And I know you guys are advocates for that and are, in the trenches fighting for transit to be better funded, because we all know we need to be better funded. CTA needs better funding, PACE needs better funding. And also, equitable distribution of funding. I know you guys are advocates for that. And then advocate for development near transit, TODs, walkable mixed use, job centers near transit stations. Those are kinds of things that, feed us and maintain us. And I know you guys are strong about that. And also, this is another subject that Julie and I had a conversation about last time is, we work together. We're on the same side. And you guys are going to have criticism of us, and I understand that. But we need to make sure we're friends. We're not the enemy in implementing change. We want to make change. We want to be the best system we can. And you guys, you help us do that by reminding us when we fail and encouraging us when we don't. And so those are all things that you're already doing that just keep it up.
Yeah, it's we always believe in the power of partnerships. So, and then just kind of speaking to the need for federal support, since, we're in such dire straits at, city, region, and state levels. We've really all been so dependent on the federal government. So we're still pushing for more federal funds, folks. Maggie dropped a link in the chat to an action alert where you can send a note to the Illinois congressional delegation. We're still looking to get 30 billion more in addition to the 2 packages that have already passed for transit nationally. And that will pretty much hopefully make things level through 2023, since we know it's going to be a steep climb towards recovery. And so right now the bill is still with the House. It passed out of committee, and we'll be doing a big social media push as it passes through the House, hopefully, and into the Senate. So stay tuned, watch our channels for that, and please go ahead and take action. We're also really lucky to have local champions like Representative Chuy Garcia, who is planning to reintroduce his transit parity resolution to make sure that federally highways and transit are funded equally. Since the 1980s, highways have gotten 80% of federal funds, and that kind of ratio trickles down, like Michael was saying, on the state level as well. So we're fighting on all these different levels, and we need you with us. Great. We have another question. Speaking of TOD, are there specific future plans to work with communities to develop transit-oriented development? I know Maywood has a plan, but I also see other opportunities like Kedzie on the West Line.
You know, that's another subject that's outside my area of expertise. I see my colleague Dave Kralik on the call here. He's in our planning department. He may be able to answer that one.
I apologize. I was taking another call at the same time. Can you repeat that, Julia? I heard it was something about TOD and Maywood's TOD, but I wasn't getting off my other call quickly enough.
No problem. Thanks for multitasking with us. So what are the specific future plans with communities to develop TODs?
So we work hand in hand with each of these, all of the Metra communities. The most common experience we have with them is working through the RTA's community planning program to really develop walkable mixed-use neighborhoods around our stations. We think that that's a critical key to our success. I know Mike's talked a little bit about the challenges that we've been facing in the COVID environment, and clearly as we come out of and come into a post-COVID life, we know that we want to be focused on what the next stages for Metra is, and we believe that a stronger commitment from the region to look at transit-oriented development at not just on the residential end, but also on the employment end is crucial for the success of the entire transit network.
Thanks for that. Any other questions out there?
Well, I think we can wrap up then for now, but Michael, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with all of us. Thank you, Julia. Thank you, David, for jumping in. And please take action to try it. We really need more federal funding for transit. Transit is vital to our region. It's vital to so many people. And I encourage you to join our next session, which is about the Coalition for a Modern Metro Electric, which they're an advocacy group that really pushed for getting this South Cook transit pilot, which Michael spoke about, it's a modern Metro Electric and Rock Island, for the Rock Island line. So please join us for that at 3. But thank you again, Michael. We appreciate it. Thank you, David. Thank you, Julia. And
yeah, thanks very much for having us. I'm happy to answer any questions. If anyone thinks of anything else, just shoot me an email. It's mgillis@metrarr.com.